Friedrich Nietzsche is often regarded as one of the most misinterpreted philosophers in recent memory. With the internet especially, the maxims and aphorisms found in Nietzsche's books are often spread around with little reference to the original text or the larger context of the canon of his works. This has given actual readers of Nietzsche quite the strenuous headache due to just the amount of terrible distortions caused by internet midwittery. And out of the many terrible attempts at reconciling Nietzsche for the modern audience, few have done the philosopher such a disservice as Dr. Jordan Peterson. There are many things that Dr. Peterson gets wrong about Nietzsche. Even in recent years, in between sessions of popping benzos and daunting a fashion style mixed between Two-Face and a Russian grandmother's prayer corner, Peterson still manages to sprinkle hints of Nietzschean quotes into his work and interviews. All ad-hom jokes aside though, Dr. Peterson's worst offense of misunderstanding Nietzsche is his misunderstanding of the infamous claim that God is dead.
Nietzsche was the philosopher who announced the death of God.
Peterson in specific portrays the God is dead quote from one out of Mourning.
He announced the death of God, which sounds fairly presumptuous, but it wasn't something he was celebrating. After the death of God, which was something he regarded as really the ultimate catastrophe.
Yet, like most things Nietzsche, it is hard to summarize any point with gross generalizations. To understand Peterson's interpretation, we should first understand the aphorism he cites in a larger context. The first time the death of God phrase is mentioned is in the 108th aphorism of the Gay Signs, and it's about the death of Buddha. Quote, "After the Buddha died, people showed his shadow for centuries in a cave. God is dead, but given the ways of men, perhaps for millennia, there will be caves which his shadow is shown, and we still have to subdue his shadow." End quote. This quote primarily shows themes of people clinging on to shadows of past idols. Likewise, it's one of overcoming. But the aphorism that Peterson cites is shortly after this in aphorism 125, the madman. In this aphorism, a madman arrives in town on a bright morning with a lit lantern, asking where God has gone. He then makes the declaration that God is dead, he remains dead, and that we have killed him. Quote, "How shall we, the most murderous of all murderers, ever console ourselves? The holiest and mightiest thing this world has ever known has bled to death under our knives." End quote. So with rhetoric as violent and lamentful as this, it can be easy to agree with Peterson's interpretation. Yet this is exactly the problem. Peterson only ever focuses on this segment of the text, and if you stopped here, it would only make sense to agree with him. According to Peterson, because of this segment above, when Nietzsche declares that God is dead, it is a declaration of sorrow and regret.
Underlying religious substructure to try to organize their thinking, and then that's a catastrophe. And that's what Nietzsche foresaw. You see, he knew that when we knocked the slats out of the base of Western civilization by destroying this representation, this God ideal, let's say, that we would destabilize and move back and forth violently between nihilism, let's say, and the extremes of ideology.
God has disappeared from many aspects of our society's life. He's gone from the town square, and in the past few centuries, a large blood stain has been left, and not enough water is available to wash it away. So, in a very conservative temperament, Peterson uses Nietzsche's madman to make a case for returning to a quasi-Christian morality, as it's better and offers more utility than the void left by a godless world. However, where Peterson goes wrong is he completely leaves out the context in which the madman exists. And it's not like it's even hidden. Just later in the same aphorism, the madman says, quote, "Must we become gods ourselves, if only to appear worthy of it? I have come too early," he said. "This is not yet the right time. This tremendous event is still on its way, and it's headed towards them." End quote. I paraphrase, but the madman's prophecy is still in keeping with aphorism 108. Even though the religious ideal of God has ceased to exist, his shadow still remains, even maybe just out of utility. And even though the madman has come too early, ultimately we must overcome the murder of all murders. Furthermore, later on, also in the Gay Science aphorism 343, Nietzsche once again uses the same quote. Yet here, there is a cheerful tone, one of freedom and self-overcoming. The quote would be too long to read alone in this video, so I highly recommend you read the aphorism for yourself. But in essence, Nietzsche says that the death of God will mean a crumbling society, as much of the Western world has been built on Christian morals and institutions. Though this might appear dreary, Nietzsche is a philosopher of joy, and with this also comes a great opportunity for the new dawn of a certain type of person who he calls the free spirit. This, of course, is going to be difficult, perhaps one of the greatest difficulties we will have to overcome, but Nietzsche's heart was certainly not stuck lamenting. Rather, he was looking forward with great expectations. Nietzsche was not a depressive philosopher. He saw the death of God and the apparent destruction coming our way not as something to lament, but something to look forward to overcoming. And this is where Jordan Peterson fails to understand Nietzsche. Peterson sees Nietzsche's joyful Wissenschaft as a lamentful Wissenschaft. Likewise, Nietzsche's science is not aimed at the utility or for a universal audience. It's written for the free spirits of the philosophy of tomorrow, to the few with tough, Hyperborean hearts. Some might see this as pretentious, but Nietzsche knew that most would not have the willpower to handle those hard truths, and would prefer to stay in the subterranean cave with the shadows. Furthermore, Nietzsche warned his readers that with the death of God would come the emergence of the last man, a person who only lives for their own well-being and clings to the morals of egalitarianism and comfort, which are sick values born out of weakness. I think we see this in our society today, with constant concerns about maximizing pleasures for the most amount of people. Even the most quote-unquote secular people continually cling to the last sticks of Christian ethics out of some sort of utility. In some ways, I would argue that Jordan Peterson not only misunderstands Nietzsche, but he is essentially what Nietzsche warned about. In conclusion, Peterson misunderstands Nietzsche's claim as one of lament and fear, when in the full context of his work, the declaration is one of overcoming and joyful potential. Furthermore, if I could be so frank, Peterson misinterprets Nietzsche as a way to cling to a soft-chewed morality out of means of utility, doing Nietzsche quite the disservice. If you enjoyed this video, I'd appreciate it if you consider subscribing, liking, sharing, and all the rest. It helps out the channel greatly, so thank you very much.